Hey home bakers, it's Jack here, bakewithjack.co.uk, bringing your weekly bread making tip every single Thursday. And this week, you guys know I talk a lot about room temperature. However, there is an exception. Roll it! Hey home bakers, welcome back. It's nice to see you here every single Thursday. And if you've been subscribed to my channel since the olden days, since way back in the olden days when the videos were as cringeworthy as this one will be in a year's time, you'll have seen a little video I did about the importance of temperature. Now, the temperature of the water that you use when you're making bread at home is very important. And the reason I made that video way back in the olden days is because it's so important and because nobody ever really talks about it and because it's quite a major deciding factor in the success of your epic looking loaf of bread at the end of all your efforts. The temperature of your water is a big deal, especially if you're a beginner and you're just starting out. Getting the temperature right rules out so many problems along the way. And this advice I give to you today and in that old video from the olden days comes out of 5 years experience of me making bread in other people's houses, teaching them how to make bread in their house, teaching how to make bread on a stage at a festival in the open air, and teaching people how to make bread in various different venues all over the place, all over the UK, where temperature is always variable. So the advice that I give and the advice that I've always given is to always use room temperature water. And the reason being, the dough's going to spend a lot of time out here at room temperature before it goes into the oven. It's going to prove up at room temperature. It's going to rest up at room temperature. Everything happens at room temperature, which is absolutely fine. If the dough stays the same temperature all the way till the end, it's absolutely fine. When dough starts changing temperatures, that's when problems arise. So if the dough is already room temperature, resting up at room temperature, then it would stay room temperature for the whole duration. Does that make sense? That means no faffing about with terms like tepid or lukewarm or hand hot or body heat or blood temperature water, because nobody knows what all that stuff is. Room temperature is always room temperature. That means that whatever it says on my room thermometer, I match it with my water thermometer, making the dough room temperature. Some people, particularly bakers, have a special formula calculating the temperature of the flour and the temperature of the water and the temperature of the room to achieve a temperature that they want to achieve. And the reason is because they got to get bread out at a certain time of the day and they got to maintain consistency, and that's why they do it that way. For us home bakers at home, it's not really necessary. So specifically here in the UK and in my travels, the temperature tends to be, in general, between 18 degrees and 23 degrees, which is fine. Sometimes, like now in this massive heat wave, it's going up to 26 and 27. And that's where the exception comes in, I'll talk about in a minute. And it goes as low as 16 degrees. But as long as you know what it is, you know what to expect. If it's cooler, it's going to take longer to rise. And if it's warmer, it's going to be faster to rise. But you always know what to expect, and it always remains consistent throughout the rising time of the dough. So as this channel has grown, I've been making it worldwide. Some of you guys, a lot of you guys are out in the USA. Some people send me questions like, by the way, I live in India and it's 43 degrees C for the whole time. What do I do with my dough and stuff like this? This is where the exception comes in. This is out of my practice zone, right? It is never 43 degrees here in the UK. It just never is. As high as 27 maybe, but never 43 degrees, no way. Can you imagine? 43 degrees is well hot. It's absolutely crackers, and because I'm not in it, I don't really know what to do. However, here's what I would do instinctively. If that is you out there in India at 43 degrees or wherever you are, Morocco, I don't know where you are in the world. I'll tell you what, stick it in the comments box underneath. You got a few options, right? I would probably instinctively take the temperature of the water down. Take it down to 20, 21 degrees just to start it off. And it might come up to room temperature over the time of proving, depending on your recipe and how long that is. However, in that sort of starting off temperature gives you a nice foundation to start ticking over slowly in the beginning. Maybe just expect it to rise a little bit faster in the end. Another option would be to use less yeast. Typically, in my recipes, there'll be 12 grams of yeast for half a kilo of flour in a standard loaf or a standard whatever, ciabatta or cob or whatever it is, rolls. It was about 12 grams for half a kilo of flour. Try taking it down by half. Use 6 grams because that will slow the whole thing down, and it may still be warm, but it's going to slow it down and allow it to come up nicely over an hour, developing the flavour and developing the texture without puffing up too much too quick. The third option would be to do both. That is probably what I would go with first. I'd probably go with both, even though scientifically you probably shouldn't change 2 variables at one time or whatever. I'd probably risk it and go with both. But you got to be happy with some trial and error at this stage. That's the exception, right? At that temperature, it's not natural for me. There's exception to my rule. So try it and see how you get on. And if you are trying these things and seeing how you get on in whatever part of the world that you're in, pop it in the comments box underneath and let me know how you're getting on with the hot temperature, because that to me is like way far out of the temperature from here. So, you know, I don't have practice of that sort of thing. It'd be really interesting to hear your thoughts. Listen, I hope this video has helped you out a little bit. I feel like I rambled a bit through the middle bit, but hey, I hope it's helpful for you. My rule is always the room temperature rule. However, the exception comes when you're living in particularly hot places. I must admit, here through this heat wave, if something's going on at 27, 28 degrees, I'll take the water down a little bit and make it start it off nice and cool. And normally I'm knocking about the place anyway, so I don't have any particular time scale to be up against. Thank you very much for hanging out with me here every single week. It's so awesome this channel is growing and reaching people in the far reaches of the world away from us here on this tiny little island that is the UK. Listen, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Please click like and click subscribe if you haven't already. That would be awesome. I'll see you next week for another bit of bread making wisdom. Bye-bye.